This is the Reconstructed Man podcast. My name is Layne Ingram.
And I'm Daniel Thurman.
The Reconstructed Man podcast is a place where we explore the transgender experience by sharing our stories and lifting up the voices of others.
This show is for trans, cis, and everyone in between. It's about building community and connections, and we're glad you're here.
Yes, we are. What's up, Daniel?
What's up?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good today.
Were you going to tell me how you were doing before I asked?
I was. The sun's out. I'm feeling good. Can you tell?
Guess,
it's like all the vitamin D is. It's the green tea. You know what happens when I drink green tea and the sun's out? It's just a lethal combination.
It's about to get lit.
It's about to get lit. Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Green tea does not equate to lit to me. Seriously, when I think of green tea, though, I think like you should sit down cross-legged and like light a candle and sip your tea. Is that what you do?
No, not at all. Like this green tea. So I drink my cup of coffee in the morning. I drink my green tea. If I have to have like more caffeine in the day, I go to green tea. And this is some matcha, like powdery green tea. And it's just like this really good, potent midday energy, clean energy. Mm-hmm.
See, I don't even know what it is. I'm thinking tea and like it's just green.
It is.
So no.
But it is. It's just a little less like intense from coffee, you know, when you just need like a little bit of a pick-me-up. And so, but I don't know. It could get lit pretty soon. I don't know. We'll see.
You're interesting. I like it. It's a beautiful day outside, though. It's cold, but like the sun is shining and it's nice.
Yeah.
I actually drove around today.
You did what? You drove around?
Yeah, I drove around. The sun was out, and what did I do? I like went to the gas station, you know?
Oh, big day.
Yeah, really big time activities during this time of life. So
yeah,
I got to get outside today, and that was good.
Yeah.
I'm having a great day. I'm excited for the weekend. Today's payday for me.
Okay. What you gonna do? You gonna go driving around more?
Maybe. You drink your green tea and I'll drive around.
I will. You know, these COVID days are really interesting. Like the other day, I like didn't brush my teeth at all. Like this is the first time. And like now I've had days where it's like 4 or 5 o'clock and I'm like, you know, you getting that little fuzz on your teeth and you're like, oh my God, I have not brushed my teeth today. And I've been in business meetings and like all sorts of things, you know, but there was the other day, it was like 10 o'clock. I was having a rough day. I was really tired. It was a busy day and it was about 10 o'clock and I was already in bed and I had realized I had not brushed my teeth. And I was like, you know what? It's not happening today.
Wow.
I know.
You just told everybody that. I feel like you needed to get that off your chest. And I want you to know that I love you. I accept you. I'm not judging you. Okay, I understand.
Thank you.
And so like,
just had to come clean with that.
Yeah, I understand. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot we're going to come clean with today, right? Like today's show is called Out. Mm-hmm. So I guess that was your first, like, that was like your icebreaker to like,
just getting ready, you know what
getting
I mean?
things out there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're going to be sharing our coming out stories, right?
Coming out stories, plural, right? Because as a trans person, you are certainly not just coming out once. It is a lifelong skill set that you are developing. So you're going to have a full library of experiences to look back on and laugh at and feel ridiculous about and feel pride about, hopefully. But it's an ongoing thing in our lives as trans people. So as we started to even talk about the idea of this show, we realized we just had so many different experiences. And we're going to share some of those today. Yeah, I can't wait to hear some of yours.
I mean, but think about how many, so the number of times you will come out probably, and that's for a number of different reasons. You know, there's the first time, and then there's maybe every other time you start something new in your life, if you decide to. I mean, it reminds me of when I met you, right? And how I met you as Daniel, and I had no idea. And you met me as not who I am right now. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, and we both came out to each other in different ways. Mm-hmm. You know, I was coming out to become me. So I think these are certainly places that you can draw strength from. I think these are things that still hurt. But when you can look back and kind of laugh and see how far you've come, you know, one thing I guess I'd say about mine, if I was to start, right? So the first person I told that I thought that I was trans was my wife. And it's not like it's not like I thought that it was going to be hard, you know, but how do you figure out what words to say to somebody, right? And she had just married me 2 months before that.
Oh, wow. Right. So like because you had been dating for a couple years,
Years.
right? And and it wasn't until you had gotten married that you had realized that you were trans.
Right.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right. I mean, so
Wow.
get this. So we get married in September of 2016, and in November, I'm like, hey, there's something we need to talk about. And luckily for me, I'm with the right person who loves me for me and who saw me and understands that and is supportive. But that was scary.
Yeah, because
I guess I'd say that was I'd say that was my scariest coming out. Not my parents, but this person who had chosen to love me. That was my scariest time to come out, because I'm about to tell you something that I finally figured out that actually feels right. Okay. Because remember, I came out before with what I thought I had to come out with, which was being gay, which wasn't right. And that was an awful experience for everyone involved. And so this time, me knowing what was the truth, I was worried about how that reaction would be. And so that was a good one. There was a lot of questions. What does that mean for us? And, it means that somebody else has to look at what that means for them. But that was a good, scary one.
Yeah. And do you think because I knew a lot of the circle that you were around when you first came out as trans, a lot of people, including myself, were like, well, that makes perfect sense. Like, you're just kind of, a guy anyways. Like, did your wife have that same perception, or like, was she like shocked, or like, what was her reaction to that?
She's ridiculous. Okay. I mean, this is great. It was wonderful of her, but she actually was like, I kind of thought maybe you were doing something when we first met anyway. Like, I thought maybe you were transitioning, or maybe you were, or like, she's like, that's how I always saw you. And that was validating. So that's great. But it also was like, what?
What do you mean?
It's like, what? Like, say something. But that reminds me. So, I mean, listen, you have to come out, even like, think about therapy. We've told you therapy is an important part of this, right? So I went to my therapist for the first time, because you have to speak to somebody to get your letter, to get the referrals. When I walked in, my therapist said to me, so let me just make sure I want to start on the right track. Are you transitioning female to male or male to female? And I was like, part of me, because, like, I do some marketing. Part of me was like, she looked in my file and wants to like make me feel good and get me all comfortable, like butter me up. Like, oh, okay. But I mean, so that was interesting too. So what about you? Who's the first person you told?
I don't really know. I don't know the first person I told, because I kind of just always had that trans identity. So there was a lot of like explaining that, like, yeah, I guess I'm gay, but I'm not really gay. Like, I like women, but I don't really feel like a woman. And so there was a lot of transitioning of my coming out that just kind of became natural over time. But I do know one of the most significant first for me was when I came out, but was kind of outed to my mom for being trans. I had told a couple family members, because my mom, I just knew, is not going to be accepting. It was just a running theme in our relationship, because I was presenting as trans since I was very, very little. So she would make comments constantly about how, that wasn't going to be acceptable. And she would blame it on religion and all this stuff. And so as I started hormones, I got to a point where I'm like, I'm going to have to tell these people in my life, because they're going to see it pretty soon. So I went to a couple people in my family that I trusted, that I thought would be more accepting. They weren't as accepting as I hoped, but it was all right. And then my cousin, who was one of those people, had actually told my mom before I got to tell her. And so I got a phone call that was like, you need to get home now to your mom because she's not well. And everything became about my mom kind of crumbling and being so hurt and broken. And it was a horrible, horrible, horrible conversation that no child should ever have to experience with their parent, of just kind of a brutal, unaccepting of them as a human being and taking away of their love and just real, said those things. And, it scarred me for many years. I didn't talk to my mom for maybe 6 or so years. We're still kind of dancing around certain things, but it was incredibly painful. So when people talk about being in positions of coming out as gay, trans, whatever you're coming out as, I understand completely the fear when there's a sense that you may experience a rejection. It's very real to a lot of us, and those have implications of potentially being homeless or just mental health, not feeling supported. That was really challenging. It was an incredibly challenging, dark time for me in my life.
So I hate that. I mean, but that's reality.
That is reality
for so many people, and it reminds me of our show before when we talked about this, how you knew from such a young age, right? And I shared how I have a little jealousy about that, right? But then you talk about I have the advantage of being a grown up this time, whereas you didn't, and it reminds me, when I came out that first time of, and said that I liked women and I was gay, which ridiculous, but what I did. Sorry. I'm going to do that every time we talk about that. Like, I can't with that part of my life.
You just need to clarify it every time. We get that. It's okay.
Jesus. Anyway. But I remember, my family was part of the church, and I remember them feeling like guilt and embarrassment and shame. And like, that was hurtful because I was pretty great. Like, I went to a great school and I was a good athlete and I was a good kid and I had great jobs. Like, you're disappointed in me, and I carried that with me for so long. And so this time around, it wasn't really it was gonna matter because I love my family, right? Like we do. It's, they're our parents, they're our family, they're gonna affect us. But like, I remembered that, I remembered that's how you made me feel about just being me. And I wasn't going to let that happen. And so I think that's an advantage that I had of being a 36-year-old. And so I hate that for you and for every other kid who finds the freaking courage to say those words out loud, right? Or trust somebody and they betray your trust, or you get put in a situation that you're not ready for, because you can, it's not advisable, but you cannot come out like in your best way, or in what's going to make you feel the best if you're forced to do it, or if somebody tries. I mean, you can't, right? And it's gonna put a negative spin on your moment, right? Don't you think?
For sure. It totally did, but I think it would have gone bad whether I said it or someone else told my mom. I mean, it was just bad. It was just bad. And here's what I'm going to say to anyone out there that is potentially facing rejection when they come out to someone that they love and care about. At the time, it felt like it nearly broke me. And it was a horrible thing to endure for years. I really had to find in myself the self-esteem and the self-acceptance that we generally look to other people to help provide us as we develop it. So it's one of the reasons that suicide rates and mental health rates and depression rates are so high for the trans community, is because when we're not accepted by our peers, our family, our community, etc., that is very detrimental and damaging to our psyches and to our awareness of who we are as people. It takes a while to recover from that. So if you're someone that just went through that, or you're facing that as a potential outcome of coming out, it can be very challenging. But what came out of it for me was a deep self-awareness, a deep level of confidence of who I am. And there's not a person in this world for any reason that could change that about what I think about myself now. I had to go through a lot to get there, just like you did, right? Like our our self-esteem sometimes in a room could probably, make it explode, because I think you and I have so much confidence sometimes. I think we use it well, but I think we had to develop that because we were somewhat rejected. A lot of trans folks are going to experience that too. A lot of gay folks might experience that too. But something does come out of that when we get through it. And we're going to give you some resources at the end of the show and in our show notes too, that talk about connecting to those resources as well.
Yeah, what you just said was so important, and I just want to repeat it, right? Like the confidence factor. Here's the thing. If you're a trans person and you've come to that realization, and I'm going to say even later in life, right? Because I can identify with that a lot better. When you have that realization and it just hits you, first of all, I mean, it just punches you in the chest. That's what happened to me. I mean, when it hit me that that's what it was all these years, I mean, it just punches you in the chest. And after you get over the initial shock and you allow yourself to accept it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that feeling of confidence, the feeling of power, right? Like you have to hold on to that because you're actually getting to feel like you, and nobody can take that away, And the people that do respond poorly or are hurt or make it about them, like that, it's gonna hurt. It's going to hurt, but it's how but you just have to remember what you're doing. Like it's about you. I mean, that's what I held on to.
Yeah. And you have, we're going to talk a little bit at the end of the show too about our recommendations, but you just got to have your people lined up too, because there's always going to be people that love and accept you. So make sure you got your group there when you're about to come out in a situation where you sense there could be some rejection at the other end. Those are tough moments. Those are not, I don't know if coming out's ever fun. There's always a sense of anxiety built around it, but there's definitely some more than others that there's fear. There's just a tremendous amount of fear, but you can get through it. And, showing up and telling your story and telling your truth, there's not anything more powerful I know in this world than when people do that, especially when they don't have to. It's just really powerful.
So, I mean, and then timing is something too, right? So when you're transitioning, and there's a lot of different ways we've talked about it. If you're not going to medically transition, right? Like you might have a little more leeway in time before you have to say something if you're not ready. For me, I came out in phases sort of, right? So September 2016, I get married. November, I have this kind of realization. I also talk to you. Like, I want people to make sure they have a full picture of what was going on in my life. Like Daniel was a big part of this. Like, I told him like, hey, I think I figured something out. And that was big for me. That was a rock. Okay. Somebody who had been through it, who was like super supportive, super loving, super understanding, super like, you've got this. Okay. You got to have you got this person, I'd say. But so I had Daniel. Then I start therapy. Right. And I'm like, I'm not telling anybody because I don't have to. Right. I know this about me. My wife knows, we're good. But in February, I got my first appointment with a doctor for a shot of testosterone. And so I was like, well, you know how I was. I was like, after I take my shot, I'm about to have a mustache tomorrow. So,
yeah, I got to start telling people.
I got to start telling people before they're like, hey, why's your voice so deep? But so, okay, but real quick, the day I got my shot, I called Daniel on the way home and I said, guess what? And he was like, what? And he's being all like, why you calling me? And I was like, I need to talk to you. I said, guess what? He said, what? I said, dude, I just got my shot. And he was like, I thought your voice sounded deeper. And I was like, one of the greatest moments of 2017 by far. I don't know if you knew that. But anyway, so after that, I'm like, I got to tell my parents, And so let's see, 2017, I'm 36 years old at that time. And I just was like, I'm going to tell them. And because it's right, because it's true, because it's real, because it feels right, like I'm going to be stronger. They're not going to hurt me. I am grown. I pay my own bills, right? Like really ready.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what they say. I'm ready. And let me tell you something. All of that stuff is true, but I still saw my mom's face. I'll never forget it. Right. I still had the anxiety and fear of is this going to be too much?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even with as confident as I am, even with the fact that I knew, right? Like fear, is this too much? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a much better conversation than the first time I told my mom something like that. The first time I told her something like that, she started crying in our kitchen, and that was hard. This time, um, I think she had also learned from past mistakes. Um, and it wasn't awesome. You know, we didn't hug. She wasn't like, I look forward to calling you my son, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but I I I said my truth. You know, I said there's something about me that's always been off, and I figured it out, and it feels right. And I need you to love me. That's what I said. I need you to love me. That's all I
Mm-hmm.
need. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to understand. Like you don't even have to accept it right now. I just need you to love me.
What was her
Um,
response?
her response was, "I do love you,"
Mm-hmm.
um, but which was great, which was better than before. Okay, and it's like you don't ever want to have to settle, but it's like to me and our community sometimes like we do have to settle for the little things. Like you take what you can get. Um, you said that when your mom found out it became about her. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just think about how parents do that. You know, they think about how it's what it's going to do to them and how it's going to make them look and all that stuff. And you know, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah. 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 Well, I'm glad that it went better at the time when you first came out to your mom. I mean, I don't know if there's ever a time, even I think when we take that power back, like you had talked about, you know, you're like, I've got my own life, I'm independent, I don't need them physically for anything, I don't need them financially for anything. There's still love, and being rejected
yep,
for you know, someone that loves you is a very, very difficult thing for any human to experience, especially when you know it's not anything that's your fault, and if anything you need more of that love to go through what you're about to go through. So I think there's just no way to get rid of that fear.
right.
You know, we're all gonna make
Tell
it
me a good one,
through, but
Daniel.
a good one, huh?
Tell me a good one of yours.
Oh God, I've had a lot of coming outs. I had probably one of my most beautiful coming outs about a month ago. Um, because they always
A
happen, right?
month?
A month ago, they always happen, and this was kind of an interesting one because I've been progressively coming out since I started taking hormones. I think we all will to an extent, and so when I met my wife, we had been together for, I don't know, I think it was like 7 or 8 years before we decided to get married. But I was very much a part of her family, but I wasn't out publicly with being trans. So
Right.
her family didn't know. Um, so now we're fast forward, we're like 20 years in as a couple. I had only come out to her, to some of her family members about 5 years ago. To her mom, you know, my mother-in-law, had no idea. And when someone doesn't know and you just know them for that long, I was so afraid of rejection. So it took me a long time to
Right.
get to a point where I was ready to tell another mom. You know, it
Yeah.
went way better that time. It was really a wonderful experience. But you know, there's offspring in that family, and I have a niece and nephew that are the closest young people in my life, and they're beautiful, young, impressionable humans, and I had a very close relationship with them my whole life, and but they didn't know I was trans because, you know, we weren't out. I started to come out to some of the family. They seemed too young to understand, and so they never knew. I never told them that Uncle Daniel was transgender. We talked about when's the right time and had no idea when that was going to be. Well, part of coming out in this sense was because this podcast started. And one, I really wanted to share it with them. And two, they could potentially find out because it became very public. And so we had set up a phone call. It really hurt to not be there to hug and see them. But we set up a Zoom call, Lindsay and I, with our niece and nephew. And you know, I'm getting pretty good at coming out now. I've got terminology to use and I'm confident, but I love them. You know, I love them. And I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what they're going to think of me. Um, and it was just I'm gonna tear up just thinking about it. Like it was unconditional love. My nephew, he's a man of few words, and I love that about him, and I recognize that because that's how I used to be. But he just didn't even like bat an eyelash, and he was just like, no questions, And my niece is definitely more forthcoming, and shared some words and followed up in a text, and she's been listening to the podcast, and they were just so accepting and loving, and it just healed old wounds from those other conversations that I've had, the other coming outs. It was just so awesome. It was just so awesome. And so,
how old?
You're going to put me on the spot with their ages right now. I think they're 9 and
like roughly
16, 10 and 16. Okay. No, that can't be right. 11, 12 and 16, I think. 12 and 16.
I got it. I got the range. Got it.
And they're just awesome. And
I didn't want to lose the moment.
No, but that was I'm telling you, when I say like it healed old wounds, like it really did. It makes me emotional to think about, more so than any coming out that I've ever had, I think, when I think about those 2 kids. And it was just really wonderful. So, the moral for me in this is, and I can tell you 100 other coming out stories. There was some funny, there was some ridiculous, there were just like all sorts of weird, like handing my driver's license around because I didn't have the term transgender at my disposal. So I'm like, I don't want to use the word transsexual. So I'll send my driver's license around that's still female, and people, anyways, all sorts of just craziness. But this one was just, it really made me realize that as trans people, we are going to have so many different experiences coming out: good, bad, challenging, ridiculous, funny. Embrace it, be open to it. Know that it's not always going to be the same. It's not always going to be as hard. It's not always going to be as painful. You're going to have moments that are going to fill you up, like,
yes,
like just they're just gonna,
your heart's gonna explode.
Yeah. I'm speechless right now. I mean, it's overwhelming when I think about how beautiful that moment was. So you're going to have those moments too when you come out. It's not always going to be bad and hard. How about you? How about you?
Well, you brought up something. It's so funny. I was going to talk about my little nephew too, because 4 years ago, he was only 2, right? But when he was born, I was not this, right? And I just remember his development. So when it started to happen, and I went by Layne, and he calls me Bubba, right? Like, my family, seriously, this is not a joke. My family would be like, she did this, or they'd say my other name, and he'd be like, Bubba's not a girl. like aggressive. And then they'd be like, what? And he'd be like, you said she, Bubba's not a girl. You know how kids are? Just like, matter of fact, I know this. Like, he's been my ride or die from day one, right? Like, yes. Bubba, you a boy? Yes. See, Bubba said he's a boy. Just be like, see, he gets it. But you know what I mean? And so I love that. And I wonder when I'll have to have that conversation of what that really means, right? And I hope it's beautiful like that. For sure.
I have a sense it's going to be. Yeah. And those are things that we get to look forward to, right? Of like evolving in a way that you become this deeper human to these. There's something magical in when you're the role model, you're the adult, you're the strong one, and you lay everything down in such a vulnerable capacity, and you feel it at that moment. You're like, I have taken care of, I have inspired these kids, I have loved these kids unconditionally. I've always known best, known better. I talk them like they're my own. They're not at all, but that's how it feels sometimes. And you get to this point when you're like, I just hope they can accept me. Like, that is a really vulnerable place to be in. And when they do accept you and you become a more dimensional human to them, it's just really magical. It was a really cool moment. I hope that you have that. I'm pretty sure you're going to, and I'm excited to hear about it when it happens.
I think you hit the nail on the head though, right? That I hope that they accept me. And that just is what it is. And I can say all the stuff I want about being strong and being confident, but underneath, right, on the very foundation, I hope that they accept me, is a very human emotion that we all feel. And the part that we're talking about is when you don't get that acceptance, right? It's
Mhm.
what else you have.
Yeah. So share
So
with me a ridiculous. Do you have a ridiculous coming out story? I know you do. I know you have to.
I mean, I have lots of ridiculous coming out stories. I mean, so here's one that's really that. I mean, maybe it's not ridiculous, but like I also coach basketball, college women's basketball, and I had to tell that team, and it's like I call it more like it's not awkward because it's you, but it's awkward because like you're bringing. Okay, I had to tell a staff too, like a room full of like 60 people.
Okay,
I mean,
wait. We got to bring context into this because
yeah, sorry.
I'm confused and don't remember correctly. So when you're talking about coming out to the girls' basketball team, have you
Yeah.
transitioned already and you're telling them that hey, I used to be female?
No,
You're like
this is
living
okay.
female
So
and then
yes,
transitioning while
okay.
you're
Sorry, let me
coaching.
bring everybody
Mm,
back up to the
got
story.
it.
So we're back still in 17. I just got my shot. Talked to Daniel. He was great. That led me to tell my parents because I was going to get a mustache the next week. So that's where we're at, right?
Okay,
So
I see.
then I was like, people are going to find out. People, I didn't want anybody else to tell my story. Like, it's just hard to be in Lansing and like to wonder what was going to happen. And so I was like, I got to get this out there. So I was like, I'm going to put it in the newspaper. Like saying that out loud now, it does sound like what?
I
But
love
I was
it.
like, I am.
That's great.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a story in the newspaper. And it wasn't just a story. And I'm not saying this to be a way, but like it was like on the front page. And then there was like an interior story with like old pictures of me. Then there was like a web story with a web gallery of images. Like
It was
it
kind
was
of a big deal.
it
Yeah.
was a lot.
Uh huh.
Everybody knew. So there was that. So before that happened though, I needed to tell these other stakeholder groups in my life, which included my parents, my kind of immediate nucleus family, siblings. I sent a group text to my extended family, like, I can't be doing all these talks. Like, hey, but I'm going by. Okay, love you. Peace out.
Oh my god, that would have been an amazing group
So,
text to be a part of.
oh, incredible. People were probably reading it and getting into side comments like, you see this text from Layne? Or, whatever we're supposed to call him. Anyway, um, so so I was like, I have to tell my team before this story comes out. So we're in the gym and they came in and I go, hey, I need to see everybody out in the hallway, right? And they're all like, oh God, I need to talk to you about something important. So they're all sitting out there, not knowing what I'm gonna say. And like I froze. I mean, I've been practicing this. I knew I was gonna do it. I just froze. I just was like, so I brought you out here. And then it was just like, cool. And they were looking at me like, what? And I told them, and I just said, there's going to be a story in the paper. I'm, it's hard to do right now, but I just was like, I'm transgender. I'm going to be transitioning from female to male, and it doesn't change anything about who I am or what I think or how I feel about you. I still want you to play basketball here. I'm still gonna, help you become a great student athlete. Blah blah blah. Right?
Hmm.
And it was great. I mean, I think our youth are going to save us. I say that all the time, but it's like it was fine. And a couple of my players stayed after practice and just said, "Coach, we got you. Whatever you need." And it's been like that, and so that was good.
Hmm.
But then I had to do it at work too. Now at work we do this newsletter. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay, I don't know why I do this stuff, but like I was like, I'll put it in the newsletter. Like what? But so like this article was gonna come out, let's say Sunday, and I was like, oh, all these people are gonna see it. So I was like, I should put it in the Thursday newsletter. So I did this interview. Dude, I don't know. But so I met with our newsletter person and she asked me all these questions and I just answered them like straight up. And she printed like the exact text of our conversation in this
Wow.
newsletter. I mean, it was long and it was in depth. And in there it said, she asked me, when do you want people to start going by, Layne and the pronouns? And I said, well, today's Thursday. I guess when I come back to work on Monday would be great. And like
Give
that
you a head
Monday,
start.
no, seriously. And that Monday, it was like that at my job.
Wow. How cool.
And so
Hmm.
I've had I think to your point, right, where our confidence can fill up a room. And so I think a lot of how my thing has gone has been me and how I've decided to handle it and how I've chosen to put it out there. Um, but I've had really good circumstances this time around, and
Mhm.
I'm grateful for that. And I realize that everybody doesn't have that. You know, everybody doesn't have that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think as a mm, as someone that's watching you go through this process from the beginning till now, I would absolutely say that one thing I think contributes so much to how people respond to you is your level of confidence. Um, you lead the experience with, I'm heading that way. You're more than welcome to come with me.
Right.
You know, it's not a question, it's not an ask. It's I'm just letting you know. And people follow. And if not, they're way too afraid to probably say anything. I don't think there's really too many people that I know that would ever fit into that category for you. But if they do, you just have a lot of strength and you present that. So I think for folks out there that are coming to this point too of you know, whatever stage of coming out you're in, you're just starting, you're 20 years into it. Confidence has so much to do with how it lands and how people on the other end experience it. That takes some time to build up, but it's one of the outcomes I think of maybe not always having the support that we need from our families, our communities, our social structures. Is that, you know, an offspring of that is that we develop our own confidence, and it
Yes.
can be really powerful. It takes time, but it's a good outcome from that particularly difficult experience that some of us you know, grew up with. So I enjoy watching you come out. I think it's, you know, it's just been great. It's just been a really good experience, I think, not only for you, but for the people around you. It's really helped people evolve. Knowing someone that's trans and seeing it unfold this way and seeing someone with so much confidence and so much pride in who they are, it shaped the way that a lot of people around you experienced their first trans person, right? Trans story. Um, and that's just been really cool to be a part of.
But like, think about you. Think about all the people that, and I can say this from my own experience. I mean, think about all the people that you worked with, where we worked, that knew you, right? As you were just unassumingly trans. I'm just, you know what I mean? Like you were just existing as you, as this great person who's a good guy, very smart, good at his job, right? Like that is also what people need to see of trans people. Like all of those people that didn't know, they just thought you were a white guy, right? And then they get punched in the chest. Nope. This is who I am. This is my identity, right? I mean, that has to factor into their picture of trans people too. I mean, you did that for me too, you know? Like look at this dude just living. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
one day I can just live,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know?
It's a good point because here's one of the things that I think about is a sometimes as marginalized people, whatever category identity that we carry that's marginalized, especially when it's invisible or hidden for whatever reason, we sometimes forget that our greatest strength is what used to be our biggest weakness. And if
Mm,
we can, like I said with you, when we can lead with that, when we take ownership of that, we take it back and it becomes part of our story that we share, not the part of the story that we run from and hide from. I will tell any room of people, professionals usually, that I was a high school dropout, that I had mental health issues, that I was homeless, that I'm transgender, that, you know, I'll list them out. I don't run from that side of my story anymore because I survived it. And the fact that I survived it, that will always be my greatest strength because now I see the world in a different way. I have more courage and strength and pride than I ever would have had I not gone through that. And I see all the other underdogs in the world the same way. I see the folks out there that have been marginalized for whatever reason in the same light. Yeah, we have different experiences and we need to be sensitive to how those stories differ and what people need on different levels. But on a common ground, all the people that have been othered and have been marginalized need to come together and support each other because we understand each other in a certain way and we need to put those stories out and in front and center. So, you know, for anyone that's
absolutely.
out there that has had those struggles in any capacity, My advice always is lead with it, is to honor that story and don't be afraid to share it, because others need to know that you survived it too and that they can.
And one other thing, because I didn't I have yet to do this, but it's okay also if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Like if you think, like, don't think that I've never thought or even said to my wife, do you want to move across the country where nobody knows us? It's just so we can see. And that is what it is. I mean, I would like to, now when I walk into a new space, nobody would know, like I present as whatever. And that's just a big part of this transition for me. It just was, right? And I haven't had the luxury, and I'm sorry to call it that, but I haven't had the luxury of just being, without people really knowing per se, and
Mm-hmm.
so if if that's not for you, if what you want to do is get to here where the outside matches the inside and you want to go about and live your life, you also won and you also did it and you also survived and you can also do that. Like, do it.
Mm-hmm. Great
So
point.
we'll make sure you know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I had, years of that. I had years of being able to just be, and I
Yep.
needed that.
Yep.
And then I decided I didn't want that anymore, but I made that decision. So I think that's a great and fair point, to honor that wherever you're at. No doubt.
I think it's okay. I mean, and who knows, maybe when my kids do get out of here and move, maybe we will go somewhere else and I'll just be like, yeah, hey, what's up? I'm Layne.
Whatever. You're going to be like, you just want to write more newspaper articles on you. You're going to be coming out in all these cities across the country.
Any newsletters looking for some content?
Exactly.
Okay, so everybody, Daniel and I want to share some tips. Tips for people who might be thinking about coming out, are about to come out, want to come out, right? Some tips for, what to do, how to get through that, what it might be like, just things to think about. And then also some tips for the people who love them, the allies, the partners, the family members, the friends, right? And ways that you can be supportive, ways that you can get through it too. Because Daniel and I 100% understand and recognize the sacrifice. We understand, I don't want to say the sacrifice, but it is. I mean, the burden it can be. We understand the change it brings to our allies, our partners, our friends' life. So we just want to share some quick tips. We got 5 of them for each. And yeah, Daniel, go.
All right. I'm going to start off with talking about, I'm going to go Brene Brown here, and I'm going to start talking about vulnerability. Because here's the thing, right? Is like, I just came out in a work meeting like 2 hours ago to a group of people. It's just a constant. And this was a group of people that are fighting for diversity. I had no reasons to feel anxious, concerned, scared, anything, but my heart's racing before I say this, right? Before I come out to a group of people. No matter what the circumstances are, chances are you're going to feel scared. You're going to feel entirely vulnerable to whoever you are coming out to. That vulnerability is actually your strength. We teach in this society that it's the exact opposite, that fear, that trepidation, that worry, that's all negative, and it's not. It takes so much courage and strength for us to come out. So when you feel those, those really tense feelings, the sad feelings, the scared feelings, don't run from them. Acknowledge that is all strength. You are showing up. However, if your voice cracks, if you cry, if you got to take a break, if you're breathing heavy, if you're sweating through your clothes, it doesn't matter. What you're doing is so profound and takes the most strength out of anything that I know a human to go through. So honor that, recognize it, don't beat yourself up, don't run from it, and remember that vulnerability is our greatest strength.
Yes, excellent. Okay, the second one, we're going to say be patient. And that patience is both with yourself and with other people. The patience when you're coming out is important because, like Daniel said, you're going to have all these feelings, right? And then you're also going to be worried about what everybody else is going to be thinking. You're going to want people to be able to make the switch really quickly, right? Like you're going to be mad at yourself for not making the switch really quickly. I mean, you have to be patient. And that even comes when if you start to medically transition, right? Like patience is so huge because it takes time. And you have to remember that this is your life. You have the rest of your life to do this. And the people, and I'm okay with this, I'm okay with this, but being patient with the people in your life, especially if they're trying, is going to be important because it was a shock to you. And then you had to go through your own acceptance of yourself, right? And other people have to do that too. They just do, right? Like they have to absorb the
Mhm.
information. They have to recognize what it means to them. And one thing I learned in therapy was called cognitive dissonance, right? So the people that have known you your whole life, or that, or however long they've known you, they're used to their eyes are showing that they're seeing you, their brain is telling them something else, right?
Mhm.
You've told them something, and it's just going to take a second for it to get there, right? And you'll be able to tell when that time has come because you don't want to take too much, but patience is going to be key.
Mhm. So true. So true. Yeah. And it's helpful to be able to recognize that someone's integrity. Are they trying? Do they want to get through
Yep.
that? Or are they just saying, this isn't about you, it's about me? Definitely a good point. Also, for number 3, have your support network in place, right? Who are you going to call afterwards? Make sure you've got that lined up. If you're going to come out to someone, anyone, and it's kind of a big deal, tell someone, tell a group of friends. There's a lot of different peer supports that are online available across the country right now. So make sure that you're talking to people before so that you can talk about what your concerns are, what your fears are. Are you telling people that you live with? Is there potential for rejection? Is there potential for you to get kicked out? Maybe talk to people about those things ahead of time so that you've got a game plan. You've got, plan A and plan B. If it doesn't go well, know that you can leave if you need to, where you're going to go, and that way you're still also getting the support, those people reassuring you that who you are and what you're doing is not wrong. If anything, it's the exact opposite. You are being true to who you are, and if someone can't accept that, that's on them, it's not on you. So just have your folks in place, have your support group, people that are positive, that are reinforcing, that can support you in different ways. Make sure even if it's one person, you got folks lined up for you.
That's huge. I
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that again. Have your people in place, right? And people doesn't have to be blood. Whoever your people are, right? Like Daniel was one of my people. That's really important. Okay, number 4, role models. And they kind of go hand in hand, right? They could be the same people potentially, but have some people kind of that you can look up to, or who's your trans role model? Like, is there anybody that you can see yourself in, right? Is there anybody that's doing things that you hope to aspire to be, right? Or somebody to look up to? And there's lots more voices, lots more people sharing their experiences. You have me and Daniel, right? I mean, we're going to be here. But it was helpful to me to see another trans man making it and being okay and living their life and being accepted and having friends, right? And so finding that community, looking for trans role models, could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. So true. And then lastly, and I wish I didn't have to say this, you have to know what your rights are. You have to know what the laws are in the state. You have to know what federal policies are, know what policies are in place at the school that you go to, the place that you work at. Um, do some research ahead of time. So if you're in a position where you're ready to come out at school or your work, or any other institution like that, know what potential consequences are, and know when you have a place that you can actually fight against what someone might be telling you or how they may be discriminating against you. Unfortunately, we have identities as trans people that don't fit into our current institutions. So that's why we are on the verge of a civil rights movement with trans rights, because we are pushing against all those things that don't fit us. And it needs to. We need to be recognized, and we need to have equal and equitable rights. We don't quite have those all the way yet. So make sure when you're going into a situation, you know the parameters and you know who to reach out to if something isn't going the way that you believe it should. We're going to absolutely put some resources up on our show notes and our webpage. One of the areas that we'll be featuring is Center for Trans Equality. They've got a great Know Your Rights section. So we'll be redirecting you guys to there, but there's tons of places you guys can go for more information. So make sure you're comfortable with that too. Don't be afraid to read through policy magazines and different verbiage to make sure that you know where you stand, you know what your rights are going into coming out. Protect yourself in that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's our 5 tips for people who are considering coming out, thinking about coming out, about to come out, right? Uh, your vulnerability is your strength, and that is so true. I mean, a lot of people, everybody doesn't people don't do this, right? And so when you do, it is a big deal. Okay. Be patient with yourself and others, have a support network, find your role models, and then know your rights. Okay. Those are our top 5 tips, right? Now we got to move over to the tips for the people in our lives. So for our partners, friends, family members. Okay. The first one, number one, this is my favorite thing to say. I feel like this is what the foundation of my family was built on. I want it to be, right? Is to lead with love. If somebody is coming to you and telling and coming out to you, that means that you are important to them. That means that they care about what you think. That means that your opinion matters. And so, like, if you love that person, that is where you start. Like, before you speak, before you move, like, before you breathe, after they tell you, like, you need to think in your head, I love this person first. That I don't know how, like, if you love the person that's coming out to you, like, that's, you have to lead with love. Remember that, right? They love you and you love them. How would you treat somebody that you love when they told you something that is that big and that important? You must lead with love as a foundation. That's number one.
Yeah. If you do that, you can get through anything else, right? I think if you take away anything as an ally and as someone that's supporting, if you're listening to the show, chances are you're already leading with love. Or maybe you know people that might need to be told that. So
Yes.
there's just no other way to put it that it's probably one of the most profound things that we'll keep sharing on the show all the time for our allies.
I mean, you could fix everything. I mean, if you could mess up the next day, you could say the wrong pronoun, but like, they're going to remember how you, like, they came and told you and you came back with love. That would be the most beautiful thing you could do.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry.
No,
it just is.
Please. There's like I said, there's not enough emphasis on that at all. Once you lead with love and you continue to lead with love, one of the next best things that you can do is listen. And I don't say that lightly. Listening is an active gesture. It's an active response. It takes effort and mindfulness to be able to do that. A lot of us are not good listeners anymore in life, unfortunately. So it's a skill set that we do have to practice. And this is one of the best moments to actually do it. Show up and listen. You may be feeling some sense of trauma when someone tells you this. And when we go into a sense of trauma, we know that different parts of our brain shut down and other parts open up in a sense of protection. If you sense that happening and you need to get up and walk away or get a breath of fresh air, you need to go to the bathroom for a second and look in the mirror and just calm yourself down. Whatever you need to do to get yourself in a place that can come back, center it around the person that's coming out to you, because it is a traumatizing experience for them typically. And listen, really listen to the words that they're sharing with you. Be present and mindful, and it does take work. So just remember that too, is if you can't find that place right away, do something, walk away for a minute, say, I'm so sorry, I just need to get some air, and come back and be ready to engage as a listener.
Right. And just one last thing on that is, like, you don't have to say something right away. Listening is it's a skill, right? I mean, listen. Very good. Okay. Number 3, and this is another big one. They're all big. Okay. They're all big, but this is a simple one, and it's try. Okay. So somebody's just told you something and you've led with love. You're doing great. And you're listening to what they're saying. You're hearing how, they haven't felt like themselves their whole life, or they want the outside to match the inside, or they've always felt like something was missing, or they finally feel like they're going to be who they're supposed to be. Like, listen, right? And then they're going to tell you, this is what I go by. And you have to try. If you love them, you have to try. You have to try to use the right pronouns. You have to try to use the right name. Because if you try, it will happen. And let me tell you something, because I'm a trans guy who's been a trans guy for 4 years now. Daniel's been doing it for 20 years. I know 100% the people who don't use my right name and pronouns at their house. I know 100%. You know how I know? Because they make mistakes, and it's been years. You have to try. You have to try. And then the other thing is, the other way you can try is with your communication. Okay. So we did ask you to listen. But then if you have something that you want to know or you want to say, or like you have to try and communicate also, because this person loves you too, and we do want to know what you think. We do want to know how you're feeling, because we understand that we're asking something of you. So number 3, try.
Mm-hmm. And then number 4 is, this one's a big one for me. It's the follow up. I get that sometimes when you're hearing this information for the first time and there's some degree of shock or just change, you may not even understand what being transgender means. You may not know what that means and what you're expected to do to help transition with a person. There's all sorts of questions you're more than likely going to have. It is okay and actually a very good thing to walk away and process, do some research, right? Think through it, have some time away from it, and then follow back up with the person. Hey, I was thinking about that conversation that we had the other day and how you came out to me, and here's my train of thought since then, or here's some questions that I have. Would you mind me asking? Or I just want to let you know that that was really amazing and I love you. My niece sent me a text about a week later after I had come out to her, and I was reading it to my wife, and I'm crying as I'm reading it to my wife, because it just was like, all she said was, you know, I'm so proud of you, and I know how much that took, and you're amazing. And it was like, you know, just the follow up, the recognition that it was a really significant moment for me and for her, for them, and just say something. Take time to mold your questions. But saying nothing leaves us in a sense of, did they hear me? What are they thinking? You don't want to bring it up again. Like, hey, remember when I came out to you last week? Like, what are you thinking? Where you at? You know,
did you hear me? Or
right? Was that someone else?
Remember when I told you when we were drunk on your stoop? Oh no, that was Daniel. Whoops. Oh shit.
I was gonna say that sounded familiar. Yeah, but just, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions and definitely follow up. Acknowledge that moment, because when someone tells you, maybe there's sometimes out of obligation, but more than not, we're telling because we're trying to establish that relationship of truth and honesty. We want to share something that is really, really deep with someone else. So being able to, you might not be able to put your words together when someone comes out to you, but you can absolutely put them together when you step away after a couple of days or a week or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And on that, no, 4 follow up gets into number 5, but on follow up, right? Like follow up, you can do that throughout the whole transitioning process. Like, put it to you like this. Last year, I had a follow up with somebody randomly. I wrote a blog. I think it was about the holidays 2 years ago, right? And I wrote some things about what I had experienced. And my aunt sent me a text and said, "Hey, can we go have lunch at Applebee's?" And I'm like, "Oh, God, yes, of course, I'd love to." But because you know what it's going to be about, right? But so that was a follow up though that she did. I mean, she said, "Hey, I read your blog, and like, here's where I was coming from, and like, you know, there's some defense in that, and that's okay, because she took the time to be like, I want to talk to you about this."
Yes.
And so get this, since that point, she's come to a trans panel discussion.
Wow. Yes.
Yes. And actually wrote me and said, that was really interesting. Like, I can't believe that, because she got to see like a little trans girl and like an older Black trans man. And like, I mean, it just, so follow up is huge. And then moving to number 5, our last one, they all wrap together, but it is ask questions, do your research, get engaged. Okay. And a good example I have for that is like my dad, who first of all is like Mr. Google. Okay. Like Mr. Google. Okay. But so, you know, he would be hitting me up like especially when I said I was going to have, you know, top surgery. He'd be like, "Okay, I've been looking at these doctors. It looks like they do it really well in San Francisco." He sends me articles that he sees, and it's just like, do your research, get engaged. Like he said to me, this is not a lie. He was like, "Okay, so are you going to do the double incision or the keyhole?" And I was like, "What?" He was like, "No, I've really been looking it up." And I think part of that is like the whole parental, you're going under the knife, but also Like he took the time to be like, what are these top surgeries? And let me see what's going to happen. And that, I guess right now in this moment, I'm realizing how important and special that is. Like this very minute. I didn't realize it then, right? Like then I thought maybe he was like trying to wanted me to not do it or trying to talk me out of it or whatever. But like he took the time to Mr. Google his way around a bunch of trans type of things. So I say to you, and he asked me questions about it.
Yeah.
Like Daniel said, process, right? But then don't disengage. Like don't have us over here thinking like, are they just like walking around on eggshells? Is everything okay? You know, like talk. We're happy about it. It'd be cool if you were happy about it, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah,
absolutely.
That's what we got.
Yeah, good show. I'm sweating. I mean, that's always a sign of how well these shows help us get some stuff out, you know, and share with people.
You're sweating because you're hot. You're sweating because you're hot. This was good. I like those tips. And I like this too. I mean, I'm happy about where we're at for sure in terms of our coming out. You said you just came out a couple hours ago. I literally just realized I was doing interviews yesterday for a position at work and I came out like sort of, you know, like, you know how they'll be like, hey, candidates, do you have any questions for us? And the candidate was all like, well, like, by the way, he was like, well, yeah, what's the culture like there? And why do people want to work there? And so our hiring manager person was all like, I'm going to let everybody answer this. And I don't know what I was thinking, but people were talking about all this different stuff. And I was like, well, you know, it's just really open here. I mean, I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community and like, what? Okay, comer outer. I mean, so apparently another tip is once you start coming out, you're just going to be like, hey, also, here's me.
Yeah, taking out like 3-page sections of your local newspaper. You know, whatever way is your way, you just do it.
Whatever way is your way. Anyway, this has been a good show. Okay, we need something from our friends, right? All of our friends that are listening. We've just given you some solid tips. So what we need from you is to make sure that you subscribe on YouTube and make sure that you check out our website at thereconstructedman.com.
Like us, rate us, and keep sharing with others.
And keep rocking you because nobody can do you like you can. I am Layne Ingram.
And I'm Daniel Thurman. And this is the Reconstructed Man podcast. Peace out.
Peace out, yo.